أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. The praise belongs to Allah, the Lord of all systems of knowledge, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, the sole judge on the day of judgment. We worship you only and we turn to you begging assistance. Guide us on the straight way, the way of those on whom you bestowed blessing, not those who go astray, who incur your wrath, not those who go astray. Amen.
Ameen, ameen. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, I openly bear witness that there is but one God and only one creator of the heavens and the earth, the Lord of all systems of knowledge, whom we properly call Allah. I accept all of Allah's prophets and believe that Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is a mercy to mankind and the seal of the prophethood. Our focus today is the Islamic Leadership Training and Development Program. Last week, we heard from two of the graduates, and again today, we will hear from two more graduates who have completed the program, Brother Ismael Saleem and Sister Varsity Mohammed. And so with that, we're going to get started.
With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. All praise belongs to Allah, the guardian evolver, the cherisher, the keeper, and the sustainer of all systems of knowledge. We seek his help, we ask for his forgiveness. We put our trust and our faith in him. Mighty and sublime is he. I bear witness that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah alone, the one and only. There is none like unto him, and I bear witness that Muhammad the Prophet is Allah's servant, messenger, and the prophet to all of mankind. We ask Allah's peace and his blessed highest exaltation be upon Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, upon his family, upon his companions, the righteous. All of you, O Muslims, be peace. Assalamu alaikum. I am Imam Ismael Saleem from Norfolk, Virginia, Masjid William Salam, and my co-presenter and classmate is Sister Varsity Mohammed.
Assalamu alaikum. Again, my name is Sister Varsity Mohammed. I'm the International Vice President of the International League of Muslim Women, Incorporated, and President of the Philadelphia chapter. Before we get into the presentation, we would like to first say thank you and give acknowledgement to the leadership of Islamic Leadership Training and Development Program. Imam Mubashir Upta, Imam Dr. Bashir Ali, Imam Salahuddin Muhammad, Imam Dr. Salahuddin Muhammad, and Imam Kashi Abdul Karim.
We would also like to thank the Study Al-Islam program and Sister Fitrah Mohammed and her team for having us. Lastly, a special shout out to our classmates, the first graduates from the Islamic Leadership Training and Development Program. It is with great pride and joy that we are here as a reflection of the class of 2023.
Today, we will highlight a core value under the leadership of Mr. Fahad Mohammed, Sister Clara Mohammed, the Honorable Elijah Mohammed, and Imam Deen Mohammed. These core values remain strong within the communities under the leadership of Imam Deen Mohammed. Surah 84, Ayat 19, reminds us that we will travel from stage to stage. It reads, "We shall surely travel from stage to stage."
Historically, there are four forces that laid the foundation of the Nation of Islam. The African American experience, including the early African Muslim slave experience, the Marcus Garvey movement, the Moorish science, and the legacy of Fard Muhammad. The first stage of this progress was the dependence, the nation. It took place in 1930 to 1975. The second stage of progress occurred in 1975 to 2008 with Imam Warith Muhammad and our independence. The third stage from 2008 to present day is the interdependence, working together to build the Islamic community life. The first core value that we wanted to speak about was the value of self-identity. This would introduce Mr. Fard Muhammad. Our first value comes from the first stage of progress under the leadership of Mr. Fard Muhammad. He is one of the most important figures in American Islamic history. Mr. Fard formulated the structure of political and racial discourse that enabled the religion to move into the 1950s and 1960s with a dramatic validity under the leadership of Elijah Muhammad and his teacher and his student, Malcolm X.
Mr. Fard's core value will remain as a strong root within the community is the value of self-identity. He used the framework of religion, the power of language, reverse psychology, and new mythology to capture African American imagination. He redefined ethnic identity. He also introduced a new cultural paradigm. He also neutralized the psychology of white supremacy, leading us into a discovery of self. Hence, the concept of the Black man as God was created.
The founder of the Nation of Islam used several tools to uplift, invigorate, enlighten, and inform the Black man and woman in the wilderness of North America. He used the power of language, English and Arabic, to stimulate the minds of Blacks in America. He used reverse psychology to undo the PTSD that we had suffered, the post-traumatic slave disorder. Not to mention Jim Crow, redlining, lynching, and the numerous massacres of Black communities like Black Wall Street and Rosewood. A people who experience perpetual slavery, racism, and discrimination needed a new outlook on life, a new ideology, and a new religion. Fard Muhammad knew that Islam was and is the answer to all the problems of Black people. But he felt it necessary to cure their psychological ailment first. We are a people who have never been formally diagnosed, given a prognosis, nor a treatment. Mr. Fard Muhammad intended to cure all of our ills in one fell swoop. He created a new mythology of our origin, a new ethnic identity which defined the tribe from which we came and the religion which we lost. This is the core value that I wanted to focus on. Our identity as Muslims practicing Islam. I say Islam, not al-Islam, because the al wasn't added yet. Like my predecessor, Imam Farid would say, Islam, what he saw and taught Islam to be. Fard Muhammad introduced us to the Quran, Islamic terms and ideologies. He prepared us to accept al-Islam. We were proud to be called Muslims and Muslim sons. Because of Fard, the Quran was placed high on the shelves in the homes of Muslims in the Nation of Islam, and we greeted each other with Assalamu alaikum. He gave us discipline, identity, and a backbone to stand against any adversary, who at the time was the American white man. While most Black people of the early 1900s thought white people to be unbeatable, he removed this mystique. In fact, he completely removed the inferiority complex many Black people had. He said the Black man was fighting on God's side as a God himself, and that they were kings and queens, and the white man was on the side of the devil. In fact, he taught the white man was the devil. This gave the black man the strength, the ability, and the courage to accept the religion of Islam and practice it openly. In 1975, Imam Warith Deen Mohammed brought the plan of Farad Muhammad into fruition. He brought those newly awakened people, those mentally, physically, and spiritually strong people to Islam proper, or al-Islam. That is the core value that Farad Muhammad or Imam Muhammad Abdullah brought to us, which Imam Warith Deen Muhammad has corrected, completed, and purified, and which we maintain to this day. If not for him, many of us would not be Muslims today. Most of us would not be. He is the reason that the beautiful and proper name of God, Allah, was repeatedly said and heard on the airways of the radio, on television, and throughout the inner city streets.
Mr. Fahad built an empire of nation-owned, do-for-self businesses with collective economics and mandatory Mohammed Speaks newspaper sales, such as The Final Call. Today, this value remains strongly rooted within the communities of Imam Warith Deen Mohammed. Evidence of this collective economic concept is throughout our communities with businesses such as We Buy Black, The Muslim Journal, A Time to Be Grateful, Sapala Square, The Thinker, American Muslim 360, Imam Warith Deen Mohammed Radio, New Freedom Exchange, and Study al-Islam. The second core value Ismael and I would like to highlight is the value of education. The seed of education, we know, was replanted in the action of Sister Clara Mohammed. I use the term replanted because the original seed was planted with Lady Khadijah, the Prophet's wives. The concept of do for self, we know, is often used about business. However, we forget that education is business. Business does not happen unless you're educated. You have to be educated within that industry. Clara Mohammed recognized that public education was a business, and that business was not inclusive of her and her children. Hence, she took the do-for-self concept and started her own homeschool. As a result of this seed, today, the homeschool industry is $1 billion business. Sister Clara Mohammed's spirit reawakened the power within us. Her spirit exemplified the spirit of what we all should be. From her seed of homeschooling, our communities grew to the University of Al-Islam, Clara Mohammed Schools, the W.D. Mohammed High Schools. Her seed became the prototype fit for a nation. For example, an elementary school from the Nation of Islam was established, called the University of Al-Islam in Detroit, 1932. As documented, 41 Nation of Islam schools called Mohammed University of Al-Islam, even though they taught elementary and secondary school, would eventually open in other large American cities. Imam Warith Deen Mohammed in 2008 at Homewood Hotel in Homewood, Illinois, reminded us, and I quote, "We have a good thing, but we should recognize our life and principles, then our environment as a Christian environment, and an obligation to our neighbors and those close to our schools. We should consider them in our planning. We should address the victims of vices and the cultural deprived. Make a statement for all schools recognizing the legalities. Muslim schools across the United States owe their birth to the vision and commitment of Sister Clara Mohammed. Today, her seed continues to grow and blossom. A few examples showing the value of education remain strong can be seen through our weekend schools, such as the Strong End School at Ashahid Islamic Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. Online schools and programs such as the Islamic Training Development Program, the Mali Institute, Islamic Learning Institute. They're private schools owned and operated by Muslims, such as the Mohammed Schools of Atlanta, Georgia, the New Medina Institute at Masjid Allah in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Clara Science Academy at the Imam Mohammed Islamic Center in Greensboro, North Carolina. And we have several camps, for example, Camp Clear in Florida.
Now, I would just like to ask, how is education used to strengthen womanhood within the African American communities? This is what we want to focus on when thinking of Sister Clara Mohammed. And this is a really unique parallel. If we think about the mother of Moses, alayhi salam, she knew his greatness. She trusted in Allah and put Moses on the path to realize his greatness. Maryam, the mother of Jesus, alayhi salam, an entire surah of the Quran is named after her. She is chosen above the women of all nations. Her duty is to prepare the prophet Jesus, alayhi salam. Then one of our mothers, the mother of the believer, Lady Khadijah, may Allah be pleased with her. After the prophet received his revelation, Muhammad the prophet ran to her. She comforted him. She consoled him. She took him to Warith, her cousin. She was his support system. In fact, before he was the prophet, she hired him to work for her, and she pursued him first for marriage. She financed his ministry when he became the prophet. In the same vein, there would be no nation of Islam without Sister Clara Mohammed. She heard the teachings of Farad Muhammad first. She got Elijah Muhammad out of the bar and took him to come and listen to Farad Muhammad. Sister Clara Mohammed held the family down and the nation down when Elijah was on the run and when he was in prison. She didn't like to take credit, but when she was pressed, she would say all of this, meaning all of the nation, is because of her. Her legacy and core value is the pivotal, the necessary and the essential part of women in teaching Islam and building a nation. We are living in a time where African American women are the Khadijas and Clara Mohammeds of our time. Our sisters are greatly educated and career orientated. They are into politics and health and fitness. They can open doors for us like Lady Khadijah and Sister Claire did for their husbands. But we as men have to be willing to walk through those doors. We cannot look at our sisters in contempt, but with love and appreciation. They can take us out of the sports bars and clubs and take us into the masjid. They can invest in us like Khadijah or inquire about us for marriage. We as men are entrusted with the security and maintenance of the household financially. But Lady Khadijah invested in Muhammad and they together built wealth. The legacy of Sister Clara Mohammed is based on doing for self and education, managing our educational affairs. That's the legacy our sisters should consider when they think of Sister Clara Mohammed. Assertiveness, doing what is necessary, making the man a better version of himself, finding someone with potential and bringing that potential into greatness, making our men, better husbands, better fathers, better sons, and better Muslims. The third core value that we wanted to talk about is do for self. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us to do for self. As a young man, he saw Black men lynched, and this forever changed him. He swore that he would improve his people's condition when he came of age. But life and circumstances seemed to get the better of him. He and Sister Clara lived through the Great Depression. They had very little money. They moved repeatedly. Whenever the rent was due and he didn't have any money, they had to move. Unable to change the plight of his own family, let alone his people, he went to drinking. Fortunately for him, he was sober when he chose Sister Clara Muhammad. He was wise enough, and it was in Allah's plans that she bring him to Farad Muhammad. And Farad changed his slave name and gave him a new mind, a sober mind, a righteous mind, one in pursuit of knowledge and truth and solution for the Black man in North America. One of those solutions was to do for self. He taught that we will never be seen as equals if we have to beg for a job from the white man, beg for equal rights, beg to eat with him and drink with him. If the Black people will ever wanted to rise to their greatest potential, we have to do for self. Make our own jobs, have our own factories, our own schools, and our own hospitals. We cannot fire ourselves. There are members of my masjid right now who were once in the Nation of Islam who are harassed at their jobs. One brother almost lost his job. But you cannot lose your job when you are the boss. Brothers took Elijah Muhammad's words and teachings to heart. They got a trade and became their own bosses. Too many of us today have lost that spirit, and we desperately need to get it back. I was one of them. I was in corporate America, and they loved me when I didn't have a beard, and my practice of Al-Islam didn't get in the way. I got a promotion, then I grew my beard. And when it was time for work lunch, they had to buy food without pork, just for me. Then I became the Imam, and I had to be off every Friday at Dhuhr time, no matter what was going on at work. The practice of my Deen became problematic. And all I can say is now that I am suing them currently. They discriminated against me for being Black, or for being Muslim, or for both. But I wouldn't have had to sue them or ask them for anything if I had listened to Elijah Muhammad and got my own business. My masjid just had a Black History Month program in February. We had a panel with pioneers who are entrepreneurs. We had an electrician, a general contractor, a roofer, and a farmer. They each told us about the words of Elijah Muhammad and how they took them seriously and put them into action. At my masjid currently, we pray Jummah at the time of Dhuhr. When it changes a little bit each week, those entrepreneurs do not care because they are their own bosses. When the Eid falls on Wednesday or Thursday, Monday or Tuesday, they do not care. They can take off any time that they like because they are their own bosses. They hire other Muslims, so all of them can take off for the Eid or for the Jummah without any problem. When we do for self, we control our own destiny. We control our time. We control our employment. We control our future. We can practice our Deen without fear of retaliation or retribution. This is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave to us. The last core value that we want to highlight is the New Africa concept.
Imam Deen Mohammed continued the tradition of human excellence and interdependent free thinking. He introduced the new Quranic language concepts and natural Fitrah-based thinking to shape the development of the community. He believed two things account for success in business. One, the regard for something bigger and more important than self. Two, the ability to manage self. These new language concepts remake the world, the book of creation, man, universe as mates, words made people, cosmic man, a new creation.
Imam Warith Deen Mohammed, may Allah forgive him his errors and grant him the highest station in paradise, sought to build the model community under the title of New Africa. He is the Mujaddid, the leader of the largest conversion to Al-Islam in history. His rise to leadership was clearly planned by Allah Azza wa Jal. How many of us would be Muslims without him? How many of us would know and understand Al-Islam without him? Only Allah can properly reward him for all that he has done for us. But what I wanted to identify as a core value that has been and must continue to be a means of distinction with Imam Warith Deen Mohammed's community from all other communities until they embrace and accept the Mujaddid. The core value is that Al-Islam does not erase culture. To me, that is one of the most distinctive qualities that we possess. Our sisters are not in separate rooms from us, like they can't control themselves around us or we can't control ourselves around them. We can be in the same room and worship Allah together, sisters with sisters and brothers with brothers, but together. That brothers can wear a shirt and tie or a sweater or a blazer and still be as Muslim as a brother in a thobe. Imam Warith Deen Mohammed taught us to use common sense. Today it is not always common, now it's just sense. That if Muhammad the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in Alaska, he would have worn a large coat or a triple fat goose. So wearing a turban is Arab culture. And if their culture was acceptable to Allah, so is ours. We can be ourselves and still be Muslims. A couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege to go to the Eid Fest in Atlanta. There were Muslim entertainers reciting beautiful words over a beat. Halal words over a beat. Our children, their parents, and their grandparents could all sing along, all together, and they did. You saw teenagers and people with gray hair singing the same songs. Some Muslims see this as our weakness, but it is one of our greatest strengths. We keep our culture and purify it. It was Abu Bakr or Umar who wanted the Africans to stop playing the drums, but our Prophet told them to leave the Africans alone because that is their culture. I know a brother personally who does security at an Islamic center for immigrant brothers and sisters, and he has to move their cars on occasion. And when he turns on their cars, they all have music playing. Imam Warith Deen Mohammed taught us that this entire universe is rhythmic. Our heartbeat is the rhythm of our lives. When it starts, we start. And when it stops, we stop. The birds and the bees are singing the praise of their Lord. Everything in motion has a frequency or a sound or a rhythm. The blood flowing through our veins is making music. The earth and the planets in their orbit, and the grass as it grows. Just because we cannot hear it doesn't mean that they are not glorifying their Lord. Our voice is absolutely unique. Each and every one of us has a unique and distinctive voice. Each of us have a unique rhythm when we recite the Quran. We are a poetic and rhythmic people. Though Muslims all around the world say music is haram, there is Arabic music, Turkish music, Pakistani music, Indian music, and on and on and on. While they hide their love for music, Imam Warith Deen Mohammed gave us the courage to love it and live in it. We retain our culture as Africans living in America because of the teachings of Imam Warith Deen Mohammed. As a new creation of Allah, our aim, our goal, our intention is to bring New Africa into existence with the 4 birds: governance, education, business, and culture, which includes the family life. And it will be the most beautiful expression of culture and community since the Muslims of Medina, inshallah. Imam Warith Deen Mohammed on the vision of the model community. He says, yes, my vision for the future is a model community that will answer Allah's call in the Quran, where he says, let there arise out of you a group of people, a community that comes inviting to all that's good, avoiding what destroys the good life called Munkar, and believe in God.
Community institutions. This slide shows several organizations who are working to increase the visibility and productivity of the Muslim community and to promote the core values of our leaders and of Al-Islam. The Atlanta Masjid recently celebrated 65 years of service. In Houston, we have 5 masjid: the Fifth Ward Islamic Center of Humanity, Abraham Islamic Center, Masjid Al-Quran, Masjid Saleem Mohammed, and Masjid W.D. Mohammed, all successful. In Philadelphia, there's Masjid Abdullah. In Washington, D.C., is the Nation Mosque of Muhammad Masjid.
In this slide is a reflection of Imam Warith Deen Mohammed's community in present times. This is the combined communities Eid of my Masjid, Masjid William Salam, and the Chesapeake Masjid of Imam Warith Deen Mohammed, both in Virginia. This next slide is the graduating class of the Islamic Leadership Training and Development Program. May we strive to continue to keep his legacy intact.
The International League of Muslim Women will celebrate 31 years of service. TILW utilizes collective resources to promote empowerment through philanthropy and humanitarian work, service and volunteerism, and education, research, and development that will enable individuals and families alike to see opportunities instead of obstacles in the enrichment of their world.
Today, we continue to implement the vision and leadership of Imam Warith Deen Mohammed. Thank you, and assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, 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 yes. Let me see. Okay, I was going to say, where am I? Let's go on this screen. Hold on. I don't know if you can hear that background. I'm trying to stop it. Okay. That was an excellent, 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 and excellent presentation. I appreciate you so much for this. Imam Saleem, I will say, Imam Ismael, I will say that thank you for the reference to the triple fat goose. You are somewhere in my age range for the fact that you said that.
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah.
When I heard that, I was like, he is somewhere in my age range. I don't know how
That's
close
right.
or how far, but it's close.
Yeah.
But no, that was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful presentation. And the one thing that I thought of as we were watching was that it must be so interesting and nostalgic for the pioneers who are on the line to see an analysis of an experience that they lived, right? When we're studying history, for the most part, like we're studying people that we have no connection to, right? We don't know them, right? We may be of the same culture, we may be of the same faith, but we don't like know them like my brother, my cousin, my sister. And as we were watching, all I could think of is there are many people who are on this line today who lived through this experience and how it must be like, the most unique thing in this moment to be watching an analysis of all of the stages that they came through. So again, it was a beautiful, beautiful presentation. We will open up the line for questions. I do want to remind everyone, as with the previous week, the questions should be geared towards the students or the graduates' experience in the program. Questions that perhaps the imams can answer. We'll probably bring Imam Bashir Ali back to study Al-Islam to answer as it relates to like things that, like why the program chose to study a particular thing. Our graduates wouldn't be answering those things. So please keep the questions focused on their experience. I have a question before I open it up to everyone else. And my question is, what was the most impactful piece of information that sort of like was like an awe moment for you in this program?
We talked about this right before we came on air. My moment was going over the life of Mohammed, the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Going over it, we had to read different chapters and then come back into the class. It was on Thursdays, I believe. And we had to talk about what we saw and what we experienced and what we felt from his life. And it really put into perspective the Quran, because when you read the Quran, you get what Allah wants you to do, but then you get the background or the reference to where it came from, and then you get perspectives from your different classmates and from the instructor, and that really gave me a new found understanding and appreciation for the Quran. And I can't wait for Dr. Wazir's class, so I'll be in attendance, inshallah.
How about you, Sister Varsity?
I would agree with Imam Ismael, my classmate. Even though all of the program, the entire program for me was very impactful, because again, I'm the only one in my family as a Muslim, so I came in having to learn and catch up behind everyone else who may be a third or second generation in the Deen. So I think just the overall package of the program, for me going through that was very impactful for me overall. But I would totally agree.
And I can appreciate. So for those in the line, Sister Fitrah has made sure that she's told you that I am a current student in the program, and I can relate to what Sister Varsity just said, because I'm also, well, with the exception of my children, I'm also the only Muslim in my family. So it was very good, or has been so far very good, to like learn the history from its infancy to present day to get greater perspective. But I do see a hand, so I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself, Brother Michael Hameen. You can go ahead and ask your question. You'll have to unmute again. There you go.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I thank you for your presentation. It points to my question. Imam Mohammed left us the concept of language environment. Oppressive, he mentioned the Nation of Islam representing that. And my question to you is, I see it in your presentation, the sensitivity of that language environment, but how can we expand what you're doing in terms of the community sensitivity to that idea of language environment? Thank you.
I guess as pertains to language and the environment, language period, the best thing I can do as an imam, as we can do as leaders, as servant leaders, is to use the language and explain the language. When I am giving khutbahs or ta'aleem, I say al-Islam, right? And everybody in the world that is not in our community says Islam. And if you say that, it starts to ring in people's ear, and they say, well, why do you say al-Islam instead of Islam? Or why do you say the merciful Redeemer and the merciful benefactor instead of saying most gracious, most merciful? It shows that there is an understanding that we have, that it gives other people an inquiry for. They want to know, why are you saying this, or why are you doing this? And you get that as an opportunity then for you to educate them and say, well, I got this information from Imam Warith and Mohammed, and maybe someone else would not have gotten it if they didn't go through this path that I had gone through.
Would you like to add something, Sister Varsity?
Absolutely, yes. I want to remind us that Imam Warith and Mohammed says that words made people. That's one of his messages throughout his lifetime. And I think one of the things that we have to go back when we look at education, it starts at home, it starts in the classrooms, and that's one of the evidence in the weekend schools. So that language has to be taught there when we have conversation with our children, those in my generation, or even those of you who are listening who have grandchildren, great-grandchildren. It is very, very important that we continue to transcend that language, to teach them to carry on that language. And I think that's where how we can, please excuse my voice, I think that's how we can continue to transcend that language in our environment and in our schools, our masjids, in our conversations at work, even in our sisters organizations.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. And I've been through the lesson thus far when we talked about the language environment. And one of the things that kind of stood out for me was like, oh, maybe I got to check my language environment, right? Like I have to check myself first, right? So to answer that question is sort of or to add to what the responses that you all gave, it's doing this analysis of yourself. Like, well, what am I saying? What am I exposing my ear to? What am I subsequently passing on to others, particularly our children, right? Mm-hmm. And how can I make the adjustments so that I'm not just repeating patterns that were put on me that are not beneficial, right? So that piece sort of like was loud and clear when, even for myself, we did that study of the language environment. It's like, oh, girl, you may be saying things that like came from your history, but right. Perhaps you shouldn't allow that to go into the future.
Right. Well, or find a way to incorporate it, right? Mm-hmm. Again, we know who we are based off our history, and we know where we're going based off that history. So when those languages are being used, truly understand it. Imam Ismael said in one of his lectures that we have nothing but better than our common sense, right? And Allah gave us that common sense. So we have to utilize it. So when we hear the language of Imam Warith Mohammed, you have to really understand the context that it was used
and the content that he intends for us to use it, how are we going to transcend that utilizing those languages?
Certainly.
Did you want to add something, Imam?
I did. Yesterday, I was in a meeting with Muslims from a lot of different communities, and the sister said Zuhr prayer, and it's actually Dhuhr prayer. But if you have a watch or you have a clock that came from Pakistan, people will say Zuhr, and then that goes around to a bunch of different people, and then we think that's the way you say it. Behind you, I see study al-Islam, right? And what I wanted to say was, because I was mentioning Farad Muhammad gave Islam and that al-Islam. Everybody thinks they submit to the will of Allah, but the submission to the will of Allah is what Allah wants you to do, what is based in the Quran and Sunnah. That's the difference between those two. If you tell a Christian to submit to the will of Allah, they say, well, I submit to the will of Allah. But you don't have the submission to the will of Allah, which is al-Islam.
Excellent, excellent. And so I'm just going to sort of flash through some of these questions that I see in the chat, and then I have another question for you. So Mohammed Baid, he's asking about Sapelo Square, and I actually put in the chat, I put the website in there. So there were some references to various different media formats that are in our community as a result of the teachings of Imam Muhammad. May Allah be pleased with him. And so I did put the website in the chat, Brother Muhammad, so that you can look more into that. But they're a wonderful group. We've done some work with them as well. There was another question as it related to some of the massages on the East Coast not being in those masjids that you mentioned. And I assumed, but I'll allow you to answer if I'm wrong. I assume that the ones that you featured, I saw that some of them were the larger masjids, but I also noticed that they sort of publicly announced some of their anniversaries recently. But if you wanted to add to that, feel free.
Right. Honestly, I highlighted those masjids because they were recently in the media. They're doing great. There are tons of other masjids who are doing fabulous and have done and continue to do great work. So I don't want you to feel these are just some examples that they were right there on my tip of my my thoughts, and I saw them, and I've heard people speak greatly of the experience that they've had. So that's why I utilize and share those examples. I attend Masjid Allah in Philadelphia. My kids have practically grown up in Masjid Allah. They've gone to the weekend schools. So that's one of my homie. In North Carolina, we attend Ashahid. So that's where my kids were born, in North Carolina. So those are in my heart. So that's why I mentioned those two. But no particular favorites.
I figured that's the case. You want to say something, Imam?
I just wanted to defend my sister. That's the same. I want to say the same thing. Also, we are in sections so that we see them a little bit more frequently. And we're doing a survey to find out those communities that are thriving and getting the what they do to be thriving, and trying to implement that in our section, and then ultimately implement that nationwide. So we're more familiar with those massages that are closer to us and that are doing well.
Absolutely. I figured that was the case. And so you just mentioned surveying, right? And I guess that sort of, if it's not a segue, I'm making it a segue, right? So for my follow-up question, what from your teachings let me step back. What are some next steps that you think that we can take as a community that you've learned from your teachings?
You want to go first? I'll let you go first, or you want me to go?
You go ahead.
I've been doing a lot of talking, so
it's okay.
What I would say is that, like we were talking about with the survey, I think the best thing for us to do, I think we found in our survey that we are autonomous, and we're perhaps too autonomous. We're in one specific area, and we don't find out information from other masajids and Islamic centers around us. So the best thing we can do is get what is working well for other communities and use that in our own masjid. Sister Fitrah was talking about going to different masajids and Islamic communities. I've been fortunate enough to do it, and do that in these last couple of months. And it's been a wealth of knowledge and things that I'm trying to implement in my masjid currently that are effective and working well in other places. I just went to Memphis. I went to North Carolina. I was in Atlanta. All these different places have little things that you can use and implement. I'll talk to the Imam of Philly and the DC Imam. All of them have great things going on. So I want to take a little bit of everything from everyone. So that's the best thing that we can do.
I would agree totally. And I think for me, what I would like to see is a more stronger collective work in terms of finding the information in one central area. We have study al-Islam and we have other areas, but how can we collectively go to one area to find out what everyone is doing? I think I've had the privilege to travel to a lot of the masjids and different communities, which have given me some exposure, and I'm very privileged for that. But for those who cannot travel or those who have not ventured out from their birthplace, how can we collectively gather that information so that they can click on that website and just read or just see some pictures or make that connection, whether it's to a telephone call, because sometimes you call some of the masjids, the telephones are not working, or you don't have a person to reach out to. So collectively, how can we I know a couple of years ago, they used to have a directory. I think that needs to come back in place, which would kind of give us a central pool for where we can find information.
Perfect. Yeah, and I agree with those things as well, right? We have to be intentional about staying connected because, as you mentioned in your presentation, we have traveled through these stages and it's brought us to where we are today. And it appears that it's in order for us to stay together, we're going to have to take or be more intentional about remaining together, staying connected, because now you don't have a certain type of system that keeps you together without you having to actually do something specific to make sure that the ties are bound. We had a couple of questions in the chat. I think, so I saw, Imam, you did answer. Someone had asked about a reminder for the 4 birds. I saw that you answered that: governance, education, business, and culture. We have Sister Kimberly in the background, helping out the classmates. We appreciate her for being here. I see her.
Valedictorian.
Yes, we had her with us last week, and I see her in the background answering some things in the chat. So we appreciate you for that. Imam Ramadan, Dr. Ramadan. I go between the two. I already told him that. He understands it. Sometimes I'm Imam Ramadan, sometimes I'm Dr. Ramadan. But go ahead, Dr. Ramadan, you can take yourself off of mute.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I would like to say, compliment the program and the presenters and the graduates. I am so proud of you all. And for speaking for the pioneers, one who stood post for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and stood post for Imam Warith Deen Muhammad, and was here in Chicago and watched the community development from this perspective. I am just so pleased. It was like watching a collective community family history. All of the little parts that we emphasized along the way, you all have put them together and formatted them and put them in a way that you could present and highlight the important points, and an analysis was excellent. And you just make us proud. And I just want to tell you from the experience that I've had that I was happy to see this development occur and listen to you all. Keep up the good work. That's all I wanted to say.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I like I said, I imagine that it was having that kind of effect, because I just think about myself, right? If I was watching my experience be presented, because sometimes when we see our experience, we see it in sort of the experience that we are in that moment, right? So for the most part, I'm seeing me now in this moment. And when I was, 10 years ago, I saw myself in that moment. But to be able to see all those moments together, it's like, wow, I was a part of that. I did some things that were instrumental in that becoming what it was. And where I am in my life now is a result of that. I'm a little jealous of the pioneers right now.
Right.
Just because, we don't always get to see the culmination of what happens. And people say hindsight is 20/20, right? And so our pioneers got to see some of that hindsight. Sister Sharifa, you can go ahead and take yourself off of mute and ask your question. You should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, she may be having some trouble, so we'll see. Let's try one more time. There you go.
Oh, yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My question is, there's a lot of concern in the community that Imam Mohammed gave us the four birds in order. He said, number one is priority, business, culture, and government. And his wife, his mother started out with education. She started school.
Yes, sir.
Did you have
I don't have. This is the great part about what's going on here is you always have pioneers who can correct you and put you on the right path. This is the great thing about our community, not just my community in Norfolk, Virginia, but there are 195 communities in our association. So if one person, we're like checks and balances. You know how they say they have the science of the hadith, we have the science of Imam Warith Muhammad, and we have all these scholars who can say, this is what he said. This is the order that it's supposed to go in. So alhamdulillah, I appreciate it, brother. We have you actually here to correct me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I don't see any other questions in the chat. I'm just going to scan through one last time. There's a lot of thank yous and a lot of, yes, they were coinciding with all the things that were mentioned.
One thing I wanted to say is that yes. I mentioned that Imam Warith Muhammad, I think only Allah can reward him for all that he has done. The same is true for the pioneers. They have put us in this position. In each community, every community that we see that is thriving, every community that we see that is still surviving and living, they laid the groundwork. So it's up for us to continue to improve, to build the community, to give dawah, and just to push us forward into the new millennium.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, thank you for coming on, for presenting what you've learned from ILTDP. That, I just want to remind those who are watching and who are listening, while they may have had some previous knowledge and training of Al-Islam, right? ILTDP was able to help them to push forward with what they had, and then give them even more about our history, about Al-Islam, about the life of the Prophet, about the language of Imam Muhammad, about community leadership and development. And so if you have people in your community who could benefit from this training, they are a testament to the fact that you should recommend them to this program. They are a testament to what the potential could be for your communities going forward. And I just wanted to remind us of that, right? They presented today not just to show us what they learned, but also to inspire us in our various locales to motivate our next generations to get into this type of study so that our communities can thrive and that they don't dissipate as time goes on because they weren't necessarily connected to the first experience or that transitional period. And so again, you know, I'm recommending that as many people as you can recommend to this program, you do. I'm in the program. I've been in it since January, and while it is intense, listen, last week there was conversation about master's degree versus doctoral. I have a master's degree. I don't know if I was, you know,
Right.
I don't know if it was this intense. I don't remember. It's been some time, but you definitely want to encourage those coming behind you in your communities to be a part of this. If for nothing else, just to have a clear perspective of where we came from, how we got there, and the potential for where we're going. So I just want to thank you all again for being with us. Did you have any last words before I let you go?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, the program is an excellent program. I will strongly advise that if you know of someone, please encourage them. Give them some sponsorship if you're able to financially, whether it's to buy books, whether it's to pay towards tuition, because there is a fee. So you can sponsor someone even if you don't want to, but if you have the means, please do it. Encourage the young folks to go and take part. It is a rigorous program. I'm not going to tell you it's not rigorous. It is rigorous. The key to your success, I will say, is your time management if you decide to do it. Because those of you who are working and have families, time management gonna save you. Alhamdulillah.
I agree 100%. I'd also like to say it's a class for everyone. I was born Muslim, and I thought this was going to be an easy class for me. I'm like, this is going to be easy 2 years because I've been a Muslim my whole life. I know the answer to all these questions. I did not. So I'm saying everyone, no matter where you think you are on your level of understanding of the religion, you should try to get involved, and you should definitely become a student. And if you can sponsor someone, just as Sister Varsity said, please do so. Everybody should be in this class. There's something you will definitely learn. It's so much information. You can't know everything anyway. So inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you again for being with us. I do have a few announcements that I want to share with the group. And the first is that I just want to remind you all to please read the Study Al-Islam newsletter to hear a weekly recording of the Imam W.D. Mohammed, of Imam W.D. Mohammed, and also to read the reflections of the week, to learn about upcoming events in the national community and the new Study Al-Islam programs. If you have a flyer for your upcoming events, please send them to studyalislam@gmail.com, and we'll post those in the newsletter as a service for all to read. So again, if you have something coming up, let us know. It can be put into the newsletter so that everyone can see and you get more exposure. And then I'll just add to that, get ready with your pad and pencil. Beginning June 2nd, you are invited to join the Study Al-Islam Zoom on Sundays. We'll have a Talim with Imam Wazir and Imam Yahya Abdullah. Imam Wazir will teach every first Sunday of the month on the Hadith, connected to the four birds, and Imam Yahya Abdullah will focus on the Quran. Both Imams will increase our knowledge and understanding about the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Mecca to Medina, inshallah. And with that, I'm going to bring Imam Omar in to close us out with a dua.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa as, with Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. By the passing of time, indeed the human being is lost, except those who have faith, work to make things right, and join together in the mutual teachings of truth, patience, and constancy. Ameen.
Ameen. Ameen. Thank you so much, Imam Omar. Everyone have a great week. Assalamu alaikum.